Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Junie B. Jones. Turkeys we have eaten, turkeys we have loved and eaten, and other thankful stuff. In this video, we're going to be reading chapters 4, 5, and 6. So again, if the video gets a little long for you, just hit pause and come back when you're ready. So remember in the last chapter, chapter 3, we were reading about all-day show and tell. And Roger went first, although he didn't bring anything. So he pretended to say that the thankful bag was his show and tell. We're going to pick up right where we left off with chapter 4 called Diving. Mr. Scary stared at Roger a real long time, and he said they would talk about this later. Talk about this later is the school word for getting yelled at when there's more time. Roger slumped way down in his seat. And after that, Mr. Scary looked back at the class. Okay, everyone, we're going to continue now, he said. But this time, please raise your hand if you actually brought something to show. Lucille sprang out of her chair. I did, she hollered. I brought the best thing you ever saw. Then she reached down and she pulled a big giant purse out of her thankful bag. Wait till you see this, children, she said. I brought something that everyone in the whole world is thankful for, and I have lots and lots of it. After that, she turned the big giant purse upside down, and wowie, wow, out came money, shouted Lucille. Money, money, money. I am thankful for money. We know from other Junie B. Jones books that Lucille's family has a lot of money, so she can buy a lot of fancy things. Room 1 did a gasp at that sight. Then all our mouths fell open at once, and our eyes got bigger and bigger. And then, bam, we dived for it. Money, we hollered. Money, money, money. I started to grab. And it's the paper kind, I yelled. Lucille laughed real happy, and then she turned her thankful bag inside out, and more money came out on top of us. Wee, woohoo, yippee, we hollered. Mr. Scary was hollering too, I think, but it is hard to hear your teacher when you are money diving. Finally, he raised his voice to a louder level. It was the level that means business. Go back to your seats, he said, now. Everyone stopped grabbing and they hurried back to their seats speedy fast, except for not actually me. Instead, I kept on sitting on the floor because I had a teensy problem. Mr. Scary glared his eyes at me. Junie B. Jones, did you hear what I said? I said to go back to your seat. I nodded, real nervous. Yeah, only I have a teensy problem. I pointed at his shoe. You're actually standing on a fiver, and so if you could just lift up this one shoe right there, I can get my money and be on my way. I tapped on the foot he should lift. And then I waited and waited for it to move, but it did not actually budge. Instead, yikes, I felt myself get lifted off the floor. And I got carried right back to my seat. Mr. Scary sat me in my chair, and I smiled real twitchy, and I smoothed my skirt. Okie doke, I said. I believe I will just sit here now and behave myself. Mr. Scary kept on standing there. I waved my fingers at him. All righty then, have a good day, I said. He took some deep breaths. Deep breaths is what teachers do to keep from screaming. I'll let you know it's what a lot of people do to keep from screaming, myself included. Especially this week. I've had to take a lot of deep breaths this week. Room 1 stayed quiet as a mouse, and I could hear Mr. Scary's nose whistle. But now was probably not the time to tell him he needed a tissue. Finally, he finished breathing. Then he picked up Lucille's big giant purse, and he went around the circle, and he made us put her money back. Sheldon hung his head. I'm sorry, he said. Free money makes me cuckoo. Herb nodded. Yeah, me too, he said. Especially the paper kind. At my house, I don't even get an allowance. Me neither, said Roger. My parents expect me to live at home for free. Lenny rolled his eyes. Oh, well, I get a whopping quarter for taking out the trash. Seriously, that's it, 1 quarter. He threw his hands in the air. I mean, why even bother? Mr. Scary snapped his fingers, and that means knock it off. After that, all of us stayed quiet while Mr. Scary went to the board, and he stood there very thinking. And then finally he picked up the chalk and added money to our thankful list. After he finished, he took Lucille by the hand and he walked her to the door. Boys and girls, Lucille and I are going to take her money to the office for safekeeping, he said. But while we are gone, I want you all to stay in your seats, and I want you to think very, very hard about what just happened here. He narrowed his eyes at us. I think we all know that Lucille's family is wealthy, and we are all very happy for her, but there are lots of other things to be thankful for besides money. Right, Lucille? He said. Right, she said back. She shook her head around in the air. I am also thankful for my shiny, gleaming hair. Then she kept on shaking it until Mr. Scary said, please stop. He looked at her. Believe it or not, Lucille, there are plenty of people who don't have money or shiny hair, but they are still very happy. Lucille fluffed herself. Well, that's just nuts, she said. Mr. Scary pulled her out the door. Chapter 5 is called Talking It Over. I did what Mr. Scary said. I stayed in my seat, and I thought very hard about what just happened here. First, I tapped on my chin, and then I scratched my head, and then I strained and strained my brain, but nothing actually came to me. Finally, I tapped on Herbert. Okay, I give up. What just happened here? I asked. Why is Mr. Scary so mad at us? Herb did a shrug. I'm not really sure, he said. We dived in a pile of money. Who wouldn't do that? May jumped up and pointed to herself. I wouldn't. That's who, she said. I did not dive in the money pile. Instead, I walked around the edges with dignity, and I picked up whatever money squeezed out. Herb looked curious at her. How much money squeezed out? May stood there a minute. None, she said. Exactly, said Herb. May sat back down. Herb looked at the board and sighed. I have a feeling that Mr. Scary really hates our thankful list. May threw her head back. Of course he hates our Thanksgiving list, she said. Just look how stupid it is. She hurried to the board and read each item out loud. Number 1, cranberry jelly in a can. Number 2, exploding biscuits. Number 3, Nipsey Doodles. Number 4, rainbow sprinkles. Number 5, toilet paper. Number 6, money. I scratched my head again. I don't see a problem, I said. I think we have a nice little assortment there. May stamped her foot. It's stupid, Junie Jones. Stupid, 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 she said. Who in the world is thankful for toilet paper? Sheldon raised his hand. I am, he said. My grandpa Ned Potts said that toilet paper was one of the greatest inventions in history, especially after they put that little cardboard rolly thing inside. I nodded. Yes, I said, that cardboard rolly thing is a genius. If you put some string through it, it makes a lovely necklace for Mother's Day. Jose jumped up. Plus, if you have 2 of them, you can make binoculars, he said. I make binoculars and spy on my sister, and they really, really work. May did a huffy breath at us. Well, I don't care what you guys say. My mother, Mrs. Mary Marquis, says our list from yesterday is ridiculous. She says children are never thankful for the right stuff, and so that's how come she started a brand new thankful list for us. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the list. My mother says if we use this list, we will win the contest for sure. She unfolded it. Who wants to hear it? Who wants to hear the brand new list my mother started? No one raised their hands, but May read it anyway. I'm going to read it for you in just a minute, but there's a picture of May getting ready to read her thankful list. says, our thankful list by Room 1. Number 1. Room 1 is thankful for our mothers who cover us in blankets of warm, fuzzy love and make our hearts overflow with joy bubbles. Number 2. Room 1 is thankful for the happy sound of our mother's laughter as it tinkles through the air and melts the musical snow crystals in our ears. Okay. Number 3, Room 1 is thankful for May. The end. May looked up and grinned. I added that last one myself, but I think it fits right in, she said. She folded her list up again and she skipped back to her seat. At first, Room 1 did not say any words. We just stared at each other with curious eyes. And then finally, Lenny spoke up. I think we should stick with the Nipsey Doodles, he said. All of the children got relief in our faces. Oh, yes, yes, me too, we said. May's face looked angry at us, and she stomped her foot again. I knew this would happen, she said. I told Mother you people wouldn't listen. She covered her head with her sweater, and all of us ignored her. We looked at the board some more, and then all of a sudden, Shirley clapped her hands together. Hey, wait a minute, I've got an idea. Let's put something on the list that every grown-up likes. That way Mr. Scary will be happier with us, and maybe we'll get more votes from the grown-up judges. I thought for a second. Yeah, but what does every grown-up like, Shirley? I asked. I don't even have a clue. Shirley thought for a second, and then she sprang right up. I got it. It just came to me. Nature, she said. Every grown-up loves nature. They love flowers and trees and mountains and oceans and other junk like that. Shirley's right about me. Nature is one of my favorite things, especially in the fall. I love fall. She clapped her hands. Plus, every grown-up I know loves cute little fuzzy animals, cute little forest animals, she said. Let's put that one on the board. Let's put cute little forest animals. She ran to get the chalk. Sheldon, quick, stood up. No, Shirley, wait, he said. My Aunt Bunny is grown up, and she doesn't love forest animals. Last summer, she had a run-in with a raccoon. It jumped on her head, and then it just sat there like a hat. Ooh, he did a shiver. For a long time, he said. Herb nodded. My mother doesn't like forest animals either, he said. Last year we went to the state park and a squirrel spit on her when she handed him a Frito, he said. He looked disturbed. She said a bad word and I had that on video. Lenny raised his hand. My grandmother doesn't even like the forest, he said. Last year we took her camping and she got her foot stuck in a pork and beans can. He covered his face, very embarrassed. She said she was trying to make camp slippers. After that, all of the other children started telling terrible nature stories too. Shirley hung down her head and went back to her seat. I leaned over and patted her. Don't feel too bad, Shirley, I said. Being thankful is harder than we thought. See, said Jose. He held up his thankful bag. I brought in our TV remote, but now that seems estupido, he said. He looked over at Roger. I wish I'd forgotten mine like you did, Raj, he said. Roger squirmed in his chair. Well, I didn't really forget mine, Jose, he said. I brought in a can of whipped cream, but I squirted it in my mouth before school started. Jose smiled. Who wouldn't, he said. Just then, we heard feet in the hall. Shh, 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 Mr. Scary is coming, Mr. Scary is coming, we whispered to each other. Then room 1 got speedy quiet. And Mr. Scary and Lucille walked right in the door. And we did not even get caught talking. Mr. Scary took Lucille back to her chair. She fluffed her shiny hair and she did a spin. I didn't even get into trouble, she said. All I had to do was put my money in the safe, and I had to promise not to throw dollars at poor people. Mr. Scary frowned his eyebrows. I don't really think that was our message, Lucille, he said. We talked about not bragging, and we said that having money doesn't make you better than anyone else. Remember that? Lucille fluffed some more. Nope, she said. Then she skipped in a circle and she twirled herself into her chair. It's a shame that Lucille didn't get that lesson. That's a hard lesson, I think, for some people to learn. Because I think some people think that if they have something that someone else doesn't have, it makes them better. And for Lucille, it would be money. For other people, it's like if someone thinks they're smarter than somebody else, they think they're better than them. Or if they're more artistic, they think they're better. Yeah, believe me, it's a shame. But yeah, if we all learned that we all have value in some way, that would be a better place. But the world would be a better place. But anyway, I don't know if Lucille will ever get it. Mr. Scary looked at the rest of us. Boys and girls, I'm sure you all know that diving for money was not a good decision, correct? He said. Correct, we shouted. We did not really believe that, though. But sometimes it is just better to shout, correct. I do that with Papa. He'll say something and I'll go, correct. But he does that with me too. Okay, good, he said. Then if all you promise to behave like ladies and gentlemen, we'll get on with show and tell. We promise, we shouted. Mr. Scary smiled. We relaxed our shoulders. And when a teacher smiles, everything feels better. We'll finish this video with chapter 6, called Something in Common. That means when you have something in common, it means it's something that's the same. Mr. Scary roamed his eyes all around the circle. Okay, let's start again. Who has brought something so special that you can't wait one more second to show us? May, I shouted. Me. No, May, shouted May even louder. Then she quick jumped up and she reached into her thankful bag. And so I quick jumped up and I reached into my thankful bag too. And then boom, both of us pulled out our thankful items at the very same time. And I could not believe my eyeballs, I tell you, on account of me and May brought the same thankful item from home. And here is the shockingest part of all. They were the exact same stuffed elephants. You know what? Do you remember what Junie B's stuffed elephant's name is? I love this name. He's Philip Johnny Bob. So she brought Philip Johnny Bob to school. It still takes my breath away to think about that, because me and May are nothing alike. And so how can we be thankful for the same elephants? Both of us kept staring at this terrible situation. We could not even say any words. Mr. Scary leaned back in his chair and smiled. Well, this is very interesting, isn't it? He said. His smile got bigger. I actually love this, girls, he said. It just shows us that even when people are quite different from each other, they can still have some things in common. He stood up. That's what happened with the Native Americans and the Pilgrims, remember, he asked. Even though they were different from each other, they were thankful for many of the same things, and that allowed them to become friends. I quick raised my hand. Yeah, only May and I are not friends, Mr. Scary. Plus, I don't even get pilgrims, I said. Their costumes look hottish and sweatish. May stepped in front of me. Well, I love pilgrims, she said. I wish I was wearing hot, sweaty pilgrim clothes right now. I did a huff at her. If I was an Indian, I would not eat any squash with you, I said. Mr. Scary laughed. See, girls, see how different you are, he said. But look, you're both thankful for the same little toy. I frowned my eyes at that comment. Philip Johnny Bob is not a little toy, Mr. Scary, I said, real annoyed. Philip Johnny Bob is the bestest stuffed animal friend I ever had. May nodded. And my elephant is my best stuffed animal friend too, she said. His name is Police Sergeant Chuck, and I have known him since my mother brought him home from the store. She held him up for everyone to see. And there's a picture of Junie B hugging Philip Johnny Bob, and May hugging Police Sergeant Chuck. I had a hermit crab named Chuck once. It was my very first pet as a grown-up. I was a teacher in Troy, Ohio. I taught 4th grade, and we all went to COSI, and everybody came home with a hermit crab, and I named mine Chuck. My mother made this little police uniform, See it, everyone, she said. He has a little police jacket and a little police hat and a shiny little police badge. She looked at Philip, Johnny Bob, and made a face. Police Sergeant Chuck does not have patches sewed on him like Junie Jones's old elephant, she said. Junie Jones's old elephant has been all torn and ripped. I made squinty eyes at her. Yeah, only here's a news flash, madam, I said. In Mother Nature, elephants do not wear police uniforms. In Mother Nature, Police Sergeant Chuck would look like a nitwit. Philip Johnny Bob laughed out loud. Remember, he talks to her. This is what he says. "Ha, good one, Junie B," he said. "Plus, I love my patches." Me and Philip have the same actual talking voice. I hugged him real tight. "Yes, I know you do, Phil," I said. "Plus, the only reason you have patches is because sometimes when you and I wrestle, I accidentally throw you in the air too high. And then you land on the ceiling fan, and I have to turn up the fan speed to get you off, and then you fly across the room and you land on the pointy living room lamp." Philip hugged me back. "But I love riding on the fan," he said. "It's fun." I smoothed his softy ears. "I know it is, Phil. That's how come I throw you up there whenever Mother is out of the room," I said. May did a gasp. "Friends do not throw friends on ceiling fans," she said. "Riding on a ceiling fan is even against the law, I bet." Police Sergeant Chuck nodded real fast. "Yes, I bet I could arrest him for that," he said. Chuck and May have the same voice, too. May smiled. "Yes, I bet you could, too," she said. And so Police Sergeant Chuck got right in Phil's face, and he said, "I'm taking you to jail, Mr. Peanut Butter and Johnny." Then he bopped Phil on the head with his trunk, and so Philip bopped him back. And then bam, they wrestled around in the air, and they bopped and flopped and socked and thumped. Plus also they chased each other around the show and tell circle. And all of room one laughed and clapped. It was very joyful. And then, whoa, 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 a loud voice interrupted all the excitement. "Knock it off, you two," it said, "right now." Everyone looked up. Mr. Scary's face was reddish and maddish. Plus, his hair looked wildish and spriggish. Me and May stopped running, speeding fast. Phil and Chuck stopped running too. Mr. Scary ran his fingers through his wildish hair. "What do you girls think you're doing?" he said. Me and May looked nervous at each other. We rocked back and forth on our feet, and we tried to think real fast. Well, let's see," I said, very shaky. "What do you think we're doing, May?" May's voice was shaky too. Well, right now we think Police Sergeant Chuck is chasing Peanut Butter and Johnny because Peanut Butter and Johnny is running away from him." She glanced her eyes at me. "Right, Junie Jones?" I nodded my fastest. "Yes," I said, "that is because Peanut Butter and Johnny does not want to be arrested by a nitwit elephant in a police suit." Just then, Police Sergeant Chuck looked shocked at me. "Hey," he said, "you can't say that." Then he turned to May and he hollered, "Cuff 'em." And before I knew it, May pulled some teensy handcuffs out of Chuck's jacket, and she tried to put them on Philip Johnny Bob. But ha! Philip was way too fast for her, and he ducked out of the way. Then me and Phil started to run again. Only this time, Mr. Scary stepped in front of us, and he took Philip right out of my hands. Plus, he took Police Sergeant Chuck out of May's hands too. And after that, he snapped his loud fingers for us to sit down. And so both of us sat. End of joy. That's funny. What a surprise that May and Junie B. Jones would have something in common. But they both like to pretend to be the voices of their stuffed animals. Do you ever do that at home? Do you have a stuffed animal or a toy that you like to pretend to be the voice of? That's always fun. But in our next video, we'll finish this book. So if you'd like, just go ahead and click into the next video in this playlist or take a break and come back when you're ready. Have a great day, everybody.